Hi guys, so I am at my parents' house and there's several people here and the Wi-Fi is only iffy, so here we go. We'll see how this goes, but hopefully I'll get everything in. The other thing is I have to keep my videos under 15 minutes, so I'm probably going to do this in a couple parts. So you should at this point have your using chemical formulas notes, so this is our new chapter, and we'll cover kind of each section here in probably a couple different videos. All right, so let's go. I'll get rid of me so you guys can see better. Okay, so here we are. Very first thing. So some of this stuff will be reviewed from other things we've done so far this year. So the first thing is chemical formulas, as you know, tell us a couple things. They tell us the type of elements that we have and how many of each particular element there is. So if we were going to talk about, let's say, CaCO3, we would know, oh, actually, that is the very example I used. I didn't even look ahead. But this tells us how many, we have calcium, carbon, and oxygen, and how many of each of those. Okay, so we of course know this already, but why is this important for the step we're doing next? We have to remember this stuff. Okay, next, our second example, P2O5. So P2O5 would mean there's 2 phosphorus and there's 5 oxygen in that particular covalent compound. Okay, so what are we going to use this stuff for? We are going to use this in just a minute to calculate a mass. So we're going to use our chemical formula to figure out the formula mass, the molar mass, and then percent composition. So percent composition is like the big thing that we're heading for here. These other steps are like on our way there. Okay, so what is a formula mass? Oh, and by the way, I hope I'm going slow enough because obviously I'm not there with you to see if everybody's done writing. So that was a little fast. So let me go back. And of course, if need be, you could always, pause this and catch up and that sort of thing. I will also put all of these videos in your resources for this chapter. Sorry, that light. Oh, you guys can't see the light. Duh, you don't see me anymore. Anyway, I will put all of these videos in the resources part of our using chemical formulas chapter. So if you do need to go back at all. Okay, so a formula mass just refers to the average mass of the atoms in that particular formula. So we're talking about the mass of calcium, the mass of carbon, and the mass of those 3 oxygens. So the mass of each of those atoms. So we would have the unit AMU, so atomic mass unit, you remember. We talked about that, previously as well. And we calculate it by simply finding the mass of each element on your periodic table. So you are going to need a periodic table, so that either means you can use your ion chart, which of course has masses on it, or your old periodic table that you colored in, that also has masses on it, so whatever. And then of course, with each element, you have to multiply by however many there are. So, if in the case of calcium, there was 1 of them. In the case of carbon, there was 1. And in the example with oxygen, there were 3. So you would multiply it by each of those. And then you find the sum, or in other words, add them all together to get the mass. Okay, so here's an example. Oh, maybe forgot. Maybe you didn't have enough time to write all that. So let me pause here for a moment. Okay, here we go. So our first example, calcium carbonate. Okay, so that would mean we'd look up the mass of calcium, which is 40.08 on our periodic table, and there's only 1 of those. Mass of carbon, there's only 1 of those. And the mass of oxygen, in which there are 3. And then we would add these masses together, and the unit we would use would be AMU. Okay, so we're adding the masses according to the periodic table, so everything on the periodic table is listed in the unit AMU, atomic mass units. All right, for P2O5, same thing. We'd look up phosphorus, this time timesing it by 2. We look up oxygen, this time timesing it by 5, and then we would add those 2 together, and there we would have our mass for P2O5. All right, now, next is exactly the same thing. The only difference in molar mass compared to formula mass is this time the unit is different. Literally the only difference in how to find it is by changing the unit. Instead of using atomic mass unit, because we're talking about atoms, we're talking about a whole mole of these particular atoms, so you would be able to use the unit grams then, because it's not just 1 carbon atom, not just 1 calcium atom, but a mole of carbon and a mole of calcium and a mole of oxygens in this, okay? So the unit now is grams. We calculate it the exact same way. You find the mass of each of your elements on the periodic table, and instead of writing AMU as a unit, then you write the unit grams. You do the same thing if there's more than one of them. You multiply by how many there are, and you do the same thing, add up the masses at the end. So literally the only difference in all of this, oh, sorry, go back, give you time to write. My apologies. Here we go. All right, hopefully you had enough time to get everything. Okay, so then the next examples, same, done exactly the same way, looking up the mass of each of our elements, multiplying it by whatever our subscripts are. Okay, getting the mass, seeing this time the only difference is we use the unit grams instead of the unit AMU. So same thing, we look on our periodic table, we get the mass of each of the elements, times it by however many there are. Add them up to get our total mass. Unit is grams. All right, so for the worksheet you're going to have to do for me in a little while, you will have to determine the masses of these, okay, the molar masses. So you'll just add up all the elements and their times by their subscripts, add them all up to get the mass of the whole compound for the examples given. All right, now I'm going to stop this video at this point because even though, we haven't covered a whole lot of new information, the next thing we're going to do, percent composition, is going to take a little bit longer. So I'm going to have to pause it here and start a new video, to stay under the time limit of the videos. Okay, so in a little while, you guys are going to have a worksheet that's going to do some of those examples there with finding the mass. And then you're also going to have examples of percent composition, which I'll explain in my next video. All right, talk to you in just a moment.